Hello and welcome to In Depth, the program that deals with subjects that are dominating the headlines. I'm Aditi Nagpal-Girotra. Our topic takes us today to California, US, where wildfires have been raging over the weekend. American officials have reported that the Kincade Fire has laid bare over 74,324 acres so far. The fire started on Wednesday evening on the John Kincade Road near the town of Geyserville. In the past 6 days, has destroyed many homes and has displaced over 2 lakh people. Some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Los Angeles have been burned down, forcing celebrities to also flee in the middle of the night. Among them was former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Only 15% of fires have been contained so far, even as the Met Department warned of another bout of impending winds that could hamper the efforts of over 4,000 firefighters. An entire landscape the size of San Francisco is a picture of charred hillsides, burnt wineries, and ruins of homes and mansions. California sees such fires every year. But this year's blaze comes barely 2 months after the devastating Amazon fires in Brazil. The widespread destruction is focusing global concern on the role of climate change in causing these fires. The efforts to fight them and how best to mitigate the damage is being taken. Firefighters in California are battling more than a dozen fires across the state. A statewide emergency has been imposed. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Many are faced with power outages. The ongoing wildfires come on the heels of the devastating 2017 and 2018 California fire seasons.
Firefighters in California battling more than a dozen blazes across the state. Fires that have collectively displaced hundreds of thousands of people and thrown entire communities into darkness and chaos. California is in a state of emergency. With 17 wildfires actively burning across the state, more than 94,000 acres have already been burned. 129 million dead trees are adding to the fire, while 10,65,000 were without power over the weekend.
I had 3 phone calls starting at 3 a.m. The first 2 were from the fire department saying, get ready to be evacuated, or get ready to evacuate. And the last call was, evacuate now, from the police department.
The latest blaze was the Kincade Fire that broke out near Los Angeles on Monday morning and quickly incinerated hundreds of acres and at least 8 homes. Farther north near San Francisco, the already devastating Kincade Fire is still spreading. 2 lakh people have been displaced here.
We're at 500 plus acres. We're utilizing our air resources and our air assets to really kind of map out what that acreage is. We have no civilian fatalities, fortunately.
Since early October, millions of people in the northern and southern parts of the state have had their electricity shut off to prevent downed power lines from setting off deadly fires. California's power companies fear that their equipment may start new fires amid high-risk weather conditions. PG&E, California's largest utility company, filed for bankruptcy in January 2019 as a result of numerous litigation over its role in the 2017 Northern California fires and the 2018 Camp Fire, the deadliest in the state's history. But the outages haven't been as effective as had been hoped. Despite them, a series of wildfires, fanned by extraordinary heavy winds, have swept through the state.
The biggest trouble is no power. When they shut the power down, we don't have any cell service, can't watch the TV to know what's going on, what evacuations are in place, where it's burning. we have just no idea.
Today, California has been evacuated. California city, several celebrities, in Bay Area, they've been asked to leave the city because of forest fire. But that's not a permanent solution. We will have to find sustainable long-term solution to cases of forest fire to really find out why do they take place and how do we stop it in the long term.
California is no stranger to fire, especially when the dry Santa Ana winds sweep through the southern end of the state, turning sparks into conflagrations. Late summer and fall are prime times for wildfires when drought, high temperatures and high winds combine to form serious fire risks. However, every year, these fires are getting more and more destructive. 5 of California's 20 deadliest wildfires have taken place in the last 2 years, and 10 of the 20 most destructive wildfires in terms of structures lost occurred in the last 10 years.
I recognize this moment generates tremendous amount of anxiety. What we're experiencing at the moment is slightly above average. It's a high end of average for this time of year. It doesn't feel that way, but it, in fact, is the case.
In California, there's been several studies that have taken place, which clearly says that because of the heat that has overall increased in the surrounding area, the ambient temperature in that sense, because of that, there's a situation of drought. The trees are more vulnerable to forest fire in that sense. We've also talked about insects. So overall, because of climate change, ecosystem of the forests have become vulnerable, and because of that, a lot of times forest fire spreads more than what it used to spread in perhaps the last decade.
Experts say the climate change has amplified natural variations in the weather, leading to more frequent and more destructive wildfires. Climate change is at our doorstep in California. The rest of the world should be paying attention. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
For a few weeks in August this year, the world's eyes were fixed on Brazil, on the wildfires that raged in the Amazon rainforest. So what is the status of the fires now? Well, there are still fires raging in the Amazon, but not as many. However, even though the fires have gone down, deforestation continues to be a major problem in the region. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the Amazon.
August 2019, large wildfires raged on in the Amazon rainforest known as the lungs of the world. Between July and October, which is the driest season in the Amazon, forest fires do happen. They can be caused by naturally occurring events like lightning strikes, but this year most are thought to have been started by farmers and loggers clearing land for crops or grazing. The world had reacted strongly with protests in dozens of cities, threats of financial penalties, and condemnation of Brazilian President Bolsonaro's environmental policies. In late August, Bolsonaro took steps to control the fire, deploying the army to the Amazon and ordering a 60-day ban on setting fires to clear land there. The measures somewhat worked, with the number of fires in the Amazon dropping by a third between August and September. The pace of the fires has slowed even more in October and is likely to go down further with the annual rains starting. But the problem is not the burning itself, but the deforestation. Traditionally, Amazon rainforest is felled, left to dry and then set on fire. By the time the moratorium came in, vast deforestation had already taken place. The only thing the ban prevented was more burning.
De hecho, muchas veces los incendios son provocados es profeso, justamente porque muchas veces, en la mayoría de los casos, los bosques nativos tienen una protección legal, pero frente a un incendio hay mecanismos legales para después ese territorio, ese bosque quemado, se pueda convertir para un proceso productivo. Ese es un ardid que es utilizado con frecuencia. No me extrañaría que detrás de estos fuegos haya esa intencionalidad, claramente. Eso está pasando en la Amazonia.
The problem seems to have moved on from the Brazilian Amazon into a fragile region to the south, the Cerrado savanna. The Cerrado is one of the most biodiverse areas in the world, with about 40% of the animal and plant species there not being found anywhere else on the planet. But about half the forests, wetlands, woods and grasslands in the Cerrado savanna have been lost to deforestation. The savanna plays a huge role in managing the world's climate. Estimates say that the number of trees lost there in 2016 and 2017 was the equivalent of 440 million more tons of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. That's more than the total carbon dioxide emissions of the UK in 1 year. Since President Bolsonaro's ban didn't affect the Cerrado, the number of fires in the savanna have increased by 78% to nearly 23,000. It's not only Brazil, other South American nations have suffered fires too. Paraguay lost many hectares of protected forest from the Pantanal to humans burning grasslands to improve the quality of cattle pastures, thereby triggering forest fires. In Bolivia, fires, some set deliberately, have destroyed more than 4 million hectares since May, but heavy rain may now be easing the situation.
Es muy difícil saber cuánto ha sido provocado por el hombre porque deberíamos hacer un análisis, ¿no? Y como le digo, todavía no hemos hecho esos análisis, las instituciones están trabajando en ello. Pero sí, lo que le puedo decir es que ese fuego que fue provocado y más los naturales han avanzado donde áreas que nunca se habían quemado. Y ahí está el mayor impacto, de áreas al sur de la Chiquitanía que eran pristinas e incluso me animo a decir que eran áreas vírgenes, ¿no? Como la zona de Ñembiguazú.
With the annual rainfall approaching, there are fears that the forest fires could disrupt rainfall distribution for years to come. That's because the fires destroyed large chunks of forests that lock in precipitation in the region, threatening a system of clouds known as air rivers in the Amazon that distributes 23 billion cubic meters of water across South America per year. This might mean less rain in places that produce beef and soy in not just Brazil and Bolivia, but also Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay, affecting a key driver of regional economic growth. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
As climate change continues to alter world weather patterns, humanity has been forced to deal with ever-worsening natural disasters. From fires in California to Indonesia, more places today are experiencing extreme droughts that are creating the perfect conditions for devastating wildfires. Despite advances in firefighting technology, fire containment remains an issue today.
Uncontrolled blazes, spurred by weather, wind and dry underbrush, wildfires can burn millions of acres of land at rapid speeds and can consume everything, trees, homes and even humans in their path. These rolling flames travel up to 14 miles an hour, which converts to about a 4-minute-mile pace and can overtake the average human in minutes. Destruction caused by wildfires in the United States has significantly increased in the last 2 decades. An average of 72,400 wildfires have cleared an average of 7 million acres of US land each year since 2000, double the number of acres scorched by wildfires in 1990s. In 2015, the largest wildfire season recorded in US history, wildfires burned more than 10 million acres of land. Though they are classified by the Environmental Protection Agency as natural disasters, only 10 to 15% of wildfires occur naturally. The other 85 to 90% result from human causes, including unattended camp and debris fires, discarded cigarettes and arson. Naturally occurring wildfires can spark during dry weather and droughts. In these conditions, normally green vegetation can convert into bone-dry, flammable fuel. Strong winds spread fire quickly, and warm temperatures encourage combustion. With these ingredients, the only thing missing is a spark, in the form of lightning, arson, a downed power line, or a burning campfire or cigarette. Natural or man-made, Three conditions must be present for a wildfire to burn: fuel, oxygen, and a heat source. Firefighters call these three elements the fire triangle. From fires in California to Indonesia, more and more places are experiencing extreme droughts that are creating the perfect conditions for devastating wildfires. Throughout history, thousands have been killed by wildfires due to burns, smoke inhalation, and other factors. Despite advances in firefighting technology, fire containment in forests remains an issue. Some of the largest wildfires include the 2018 California wildfires, when record high temperatures combined with dry vegetation led to 17 active fires across the Golden State. The 2018 Athens wildfires. A lethal combination of record high temperatures, dry conditions, and high winds resulted in wildfires emergency officials were unable to adequately contain. At least 81 people died in the disaster. 2018 Uttarakhand wildfires. Uttarakhand lost 4,538 hectares of vegetation to forest fires this year, incurring a loss of 86 lakh rupees in the process. The 2014 Northwest Territories fires. The 385 wildfires that burned through Canada's Northwest Territories during the summer of 2014 were the largest the country had ever seen, burning millions of acres and costing $56 million to fight. The 1997 Indonesian forest fires of the late 90s are quite possibly the most severe in several hundred years, so big that they had a global impact. The 1989 Manitoba wildfires was one of the worst that occurred in first half of 1989 and saw the loss of over 8 million acres of forest in the province of Canada. The 1987 Black Dragon fire. The border between China and the former Soviet Union was once marked by land charred to bone by one of the history's largest wildfires. 1939 Black Friday bushfires. Powerful gusts of wind carried the flames across the Australian state of Victoria, burning everything in their path. The Great Fire of 1919. Strong winds fueled this massive wildfire, taking many Canadians by surprise. Almost without warning, the small town of Lac was completely encircled by a powerful blaze that quickly chewed through homes. Fires are a major cause of forest degradation and have wide-ranging ecological, economic, and social impacts, including loss of valuable timber resources, degradation of catchment areas, loss of biodiversity and extinction of plants and animals, loss of wildlife habitat and depletion of wildlife, loss of natural regeneration and reduction in forest cover, global warming, loss of carbon sink resource and increase in percentage of CO2 in the atmosphere, change in the microclimate of the area with unhealthy living conditions, soil erosion affecting productivity of soils and production, ozone layer depletion, loss of livelihood of tribal people and the rural poor, as approximately 300 million people are directly dependent upon collection of non-timber forest products from forest areas for their livelihood. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Millions of acres burn every year in wildfires across the United States and in California alone. Fire has become nearly a year-round risk. Research shows that changes in climate have led to hot, dry conditions that boost this increase in fire activity worldwide. And scientists say if we don't break the warming cycle, we can expect more wildfires in the years ahead. Here's a detailed report.
Hot and dry. These are the watchwords for large fires. While every fire needs a spark to ignite, the hot and dry conditions in the atmosphere determine the likelihood of a fire starting, its intensity, and the speed at which it spreads. Over the past several decades, as the world has increasingly warmed, so has its potential to burn. According to NASA, Since 1880, the world has warmed by 1.09 degrees Celsius, with the 5 warmest years on record occurring in the last 5 years. Since 1980s, across the United States and around the world, wildfires are growing in intensity and frequency. In fact, millions of acres burn every year in wildfires across the US, and in California alone, fire has become nearly a year-round risk. Combined with data analyzed by climate scientists, researchers at NASA have correlated the growing incidence and intensity of wildfires with rising global temperatures due to climate change.
See, we've actually seen for years together forest fires occurring in several parts of the world, including in India in that sense. In several parts of Uttarakhand, Himachal, we've seen forest fires. Globally, California had a worse fire in 2017, and as we speak right now, almost 70,000 acres of forest have actually been gutted in California in last couple of days in that sense. It's a phenomena that's been on for a long time, and a lot of that could be attributed to climate change. Of course, forest fire contributes to climate change, and climate change in return also, in some way or the other, creates a situation where more and more forest fires take place.
Research shows climate change contributes to more and bigger wildfires in a variety of ways. Scientists say the rise in average global temperatures has led to higher spring and summer temperatures, and importantly, an earlier onset of spring. This pattern has led to a rapid melting of spring snowpack, causing soils to dry out earlier and remain dry longer. After months of drying in the longer periods of higher temperatures, stressed forests have become more susceptible to insect infestation like bark beetles. Throughout the western US and Canada, bark beetles have killed off hundreds of millions of trees and devastated forest lands, turning them into kindling for catastrophic wildfires. Besides this, scientists say as temperatures rise, plants lose more water per unit of carbon dioxide, exacerbating the already dry and dangerous conditions produced by the drought. With less water coming into the ecosystem, plants become water stressed, which can kill huge numbers of plants if drought conditions persist.
Humankind as basic man is so greedy that we are encroaching land. How much ever land we have, there is no limit. We are encroaching forest. Urbanization is clearing forest to settle human beings there. So first reason is that we are clearing forest. So we are creating a lot of imbalance with nature. Secondly, there is all this is also influencing the climate change, because when you mess up too much with nature, climate change is going to bounce back at us, in a very negative manner. Then there is also high strong winds which are causing a lot of fires. Then there is a lot of dry land. The land is dry because if you are clearing forest, you are creating, you are moving the natural trees and vegetation, and everything is turning into a dry land. So the more you mess with nature, the more it is going to reciprocate in a very, very harsh manner. So forest fire, or wildfires as we call them, in whether it is happening in the Amazon or California or even back home in India, is a result of man-made factors as well as natural factors.
Research shows that humans and climate together are really the dual factors that are shaping the fires around the world. In studying the long-term trends of fires, human land management is as important to consider as any other factor. According to NASA, globally, some place on Earth is always on fire, and most of those fires are set by people, either accidentally in wildlands or on purpose. For example, to clear land or burn agricultural fields after the harvest to remove crop residues.
We need to look at climate change from a policy perspective rather than just a disaster perspective. We should treat forest fire not just as an event, but an impact of a long-term event called climate change. We need to really take stringent measures. So to combat climate change or global warming, we will have to look at our energy consumption patterns and overall control on the temperature rise in that sense. Similar to that, we also need to look at how do we actually control our forest, or how do we actually manage our forest. So are there buffer zones that are actually maintained in several places? Protected forests, they need to have better forest guards and better management. We also need to have a better disaster management plan in place, because a lot of times forest lost, and that's when we actually talk about forest fire. We need to talk about forest fire before the forest fire takes place. So we need to really have a short-term, medium-term and long-term plan globally, and also in particular in India, to manage forest fires.
Well, on the flip side, fires also impact humans and climate in return. For the climate, fires can directly and indirectly increase carbon emissions to the atmosphere. While they burn, fires release carbon stored in trees or in the soil. And when fire roars through, all that carbon literally goes up in smoke. And for people, beyond the immediate loss of life and property, smoke is a serious health hazard when small soot particles enter the lungs. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So that's it from us today in In-Depth. We'll be back same time tomorrow with a focus on some other subject. In case you missed the television broadcast, you can also watch our program online on YouTube, the link for which is given below. Suggestions and feedback about the program are also welcome. Thank you for your time.